In the world of entertainment, there is a quiet competition, or more like an all-out war for creating the best superpower. Marvel and DC have been going at it for years, Shonen anime has been looking for it too, in their own way, and a show like Avatar: The Last Airbender, for example, struck absolute gold a couple of decades back. But among them all, to me, there is a clear winner. Midoriya's One for All. And I don't mean One for All in general, I mean Midoriya's One for All. Because a power that has been cultivated through generations of world leader heroes is an amazing concept. That's one of the best parts about it. But what makes Midoriya truly special, not only among other bearers of One for All, not only among other shonen protagonists, but among the entire superhero industry, is this. My Hero Academia is a classic shonen, but Midoriya's previous One for All bearer had to retire earlier than expected, which means he gets to become literally overpowered without being ready for it, especially being a human without a Kosei. And this is where Midoriya rises amongst his shonen protagonist peers. This show isn't about Midoriya becoming overpowered. It's about Midoriya being overpowered and becoming able to even survive that. Midoriya barely has to go through the process of unlocking or channeling his core potential. He's able to do that from the very first fight scene. But isn't it kind of the same thing? Because in these other shows it's common too for protagonists to at least temporarily tap into a hidden potential in life and death situations. Well, no, there is a difference. In other shows the protagonist unconsciously releases an inner power when it was most needed, which is cool, that's amazing. But in My Hero Academia, during every fight, every competition, every conflict, Midoriya is under the conscious tension of holding back or going all in and facing the consequences. And the viewer knows he is, so we get to be there with him and clearly foresee when he's getting to that point when he does not care anymore, when he is able to give everything up, even his own body, for a victory or for one life. And this is exactly the best scene that broke My Hero Academia. Deku versus Muscular. And how dare I, right? This fight is amazing, you will say. Well, it is indeed. This is my absolute favorite scene of the show, no, of all of shonen anime. Until it is not. First, let me explain why this almost, and I really mean almost, was the best scene in the show. My Hero Academia understands symbolism really well. After all, the most important hero in its universe is the most important hero not as much because he's the most powerful, but because he is a symbol of heroism, a symbol of peace. And Midoriya is working his way to becoming exactly that. But if ever you are to truly become great at something, you need to be pouring your heart into it, even when the spotlight isn't on you yet. All might pass One for All to Midoriya because he did exactly that. He projected such selfless heroism that even the very symbol of a hero was inspired by him. And Deku vs Muscular was Midoriya's own key moment of growth. In the quiet, alone, away from everybody's eyes, just him, a far more powerful villain, and a helpless, traumatized, resigned child. But a child who, in the middle of his despair, went above and beyond his limits and manifested a sign, a symbol of heroism to inspire others, and Midoriya, like All Might back then, took the cue. Not anymore caring about the doctor's warning that any further damage to his arm from the full use of One for All would be irreparable, he went above and beyond and projected One for All to the 1,000,000%. And now his arm, destroyed, gone, broken, is a symbol, a constant reminder to himself and us that he has pledged his life and body to the purpose of saving those in need at any cost, even at the cost of what is most valuable to him, the very tools that allow him to save lives, the tools that allow him to be what he dreamed, a hero. His broken arm doesn't hang there as a mere scar, it doesn't hang as a merely useless limb, rather, it hangs from then on as the truest symbol of selfless heroism. Except This is not that scene, except the rubble and dust clears away and it's the same scene we have been watching since the start of the show. His arm is fine, yeah, it hurts a lot, yeah, he is reminded he should be more careful, yeah, he can't punch with it for a while, but that has happened 10 times already in the show, from every single use he has made of 100% one for all. And then he goes and uses it to the 1,000,000% and nothing different happens. Nobody really talks about it, no one even acknowledges that the most amazing move so far just happened because they do not know. No one was there to witness it, which is cool that he did this away from the spotlight. But they should have all had this dreadful reaction of, oh my god, what did Midoriya just do to save this kid? And they should have all had this reaction from seeing Midoriya's arm blown off clean, which I admit is a bit too much for a teen show, though not unheard of. But at least his arm should have been visibly broken, visibly a dead lump of meat. It should have been anything but a darker hue of purple. In an obscure page that only 0.01% of the audience read, the author does address this issue, and he supports my points on the failures of the scene. Look, this scene is such a huge letdown because of its failure at doing two things that are essential for a story's success. Failure at keeping rules consistent, and failure at having impactful consequences. Firstly, keeping in-universe rules consistent is relevant to a lot but not all of fiction. It's essential in science fiction and some fantasy genres. And if an in-universe rule is to be broken, the author has to plan it, execute it, and justify it inside the story flawlessly. And this is absolutely not the case with shonen anime. Breaking the in-universe rules is actually the core of these shows. An impossibly strong new threat appears, so the hero has to grow impossibly strong to face it. So this is not the type of rule that is the issue here. In any case, what that means is that it's perfectly fine and believable that Midoriya will all of a sudden use 1,000,000% of his power. The rule that this scene failed to keep consistent is the rule of communication. As in shonen anime really anything goes in terms of power levels, authors use a device to keep their audience on the know and stop them from being confused by the fights. And that is that characters scream their important moves. This is at first extremely weird and off-putting, but we've all grown kinda fond of it, and shows have really embraced this idea and worked to create some hilarious and awesome moments from it. United! But this isn't just fun, it's also kind of important, because it's one of the main ways authors consistently communicate a character's growth and effort. And when I say consistently, I mean consistently. Whenever a My Hero Academia character shouts what move they're doing, they do exactly just that. So the audience comes to rely on these lines to make sense out of a fight. So when the author makes a comment after the fact saying, "No, what I led you to understand had happened didn't really happen," it's frustrating. It's like J.K. Rowling revealing that wizards in the Harry Potter world didn't actually use toilets. Like, no, thank you, give me my ignorance back, I was happier with it. This frustrating confusion is first, not fun, and second, not the viewer's fault. And this isn't me blaming the author, because he himself rightfully apologizes in this very column. And that's alright, it was a mistake, it kind of ruined this scene, but he apologized, it's just one episode, it's okay, let's move on. But what's the big deal then? Well, what really breaks not only this scene, but the entire show is the second failure. Failure at having impactful consequences. What separates an engaging story from a boring story? That's a really complicated question, but for me the most objective test you can make is how believable a main character's death is. In a boring story, it does not matter how much you try to sell a main character death, I will not believe it or care about it, because I know that by next season they will be shockingly back. If people are engaged in a story, you only need to hit your protagonist once with a golf club in the face and you will instantly have a Twitter riot because people care and they know from a single golf swing that he's dead. Regardless of what Midoriya's move really was, which, by the way, we just do not know, at least one thing is clear from both the author's commentary and very much so from the scene. This match was above and beyond anything Midoriya had done so far. It was at the very least, a combination or rather a multiplication of a Delaware and a Detroit Smash. So your expectations, no matter how tame, and really they're incentivized to not be tame at all, they demand some sort of significant aftermath, and then they are very much let down by there being no significant or new or further consequence at all. And that completely breaks the engagement of the viewer, the sense of risk, of danger, of urgency in a situation of conflict. And that is very problematic when you realize that conflict is basically what stories and therefore anime arcs are made of. And if your previous story, movie, or arc wasn't engaging or impactful, people become less and less likely to keep watching. And rightfully so, because it is consequence that engages. It is consequence that pays off. But there is a problem. There is a huge, monumental, and historical flaw in the very idea of shonen. Shonen follows the same hero cast across hundreds of episodes. And that means that the writer is a slave to their main hero cast. It means that the main cast cannot die, and if they do, they even have to be resurrected repeatedly, which is just insane. It means that someone in the main cast being sent away temporarily is highly risky, because they rely constantly on their mutual banter, support, and relationships. And don't even think about touching the protagonist. A protagonist change can be a catastrophe, meaning it's not a risk worth taking, even though it could be amazing if done well. And My Hero Academia's author seems to believe this too, because we know from the off-canon 2019 movie Heroes Rising that he toyed with the idea of Midoriya having to prematurely pass One for All over to Bakugo at the final battle, which he ultimately decided against. Which makes me kind of sad, because that would have been amazing in my opinion. The show shifting to Bakugo and him having to come to terms with the power he received and finally becoming humble enough to embrace Midoriya as his hero, I believe that would have been extremely beautiful and original. But it is also true that a lot of people may antagonize a new protagonist and not have patience to care enough to stick around and see them grow, as has been the case with Boruto or The Last of Us Part 2. The protagonist really is the show for many people, so it's never going to please everyone if you swap them or move their development in a different trajectory than what was expected. Even hurting or hindering your protagonist, like in the case we're dealing with, is a big problem and inconvenience. The next seasons and fights have to be written about and around the protagonist's injuries, and the fans may be upset about their favorite character not fighting as much anymore or the way they used to. But there are always risks. And while I can understand why the author chose against passing One for All to Bakugo, what I still cannot understand is why, for the sake of not breaking the protagonist's arm, the potential of the entire story had to be broken instead. And this is the part that really drives me crazy. That as a critic, if I want to be fair, I should now produce and suggest my own solution to this problem. But I don't have to. You know why? Because there was a solution already in the show. And it came in the form of a temporary plot device and a permanent solution that was beautifully consistent with the in-universe rules. The temporary plot device, which I did not make up, it was already in the show, it was shoot style. After the fight with Muscular, Midoriya, in order to protect his injured arms, he starts developing a fighting style that relies mostly on kicks and using his feet in fights. This isn't really taken too seriously, and he eventually starts using his arms a bit again. But it would have functioned perfectly if Midoriya would have lost his arm. It would have been the same thing with him focusing on shoot style for the next season and a half, and it would have been even better because now it was really necessary because of his missing arm. But the issue is how to fix the missing arm. Will he just keep using shoot style for the rest of the show? Because it's pretty cool as a solution to his handicap, but it will eventually get repetitive and limit his growth. But again, believe it or not, there was a solution already in place. Eddie's Kosei is called Rewind, and it does just that. It rewinds the bodies of biological beings into a previous state, and I believe you can already see how this would solve the issue with Midoriya's broken arm. And the best part about Eddie is, or what would have been the best part about Eddie, is that she isn't just a one-off extremely convenient solution to Midoriya's problem. She is highly believable because, well, this is a world where people simply have superpowers, and even though she still stands out because her power is extremely unique, specific specific and powerful, this is also handled perfectly fine because everyone recognizes this and is trying to get to her and exploit her because of how good her Kosei is. So much so that an entire arc of the show spins around her, and it is then that Deku vs Overhaul happens. And that fateful moment when Midoriya carries her on his back, able to fight with One for All to the 100% while his injuries are healed, or rather rewound on the go, is perfectly believable and satisfying because they are both so well placed in the universe, and the consequence of their synergy is reasonable, it's amazing, it's gratifying. Right there, everything would have gone full circle if it wasn't for that single missing piece, the broken arm. And the truth is, even then, Deku vs Muscular will not have been the best scene in the show. Because remember, consequence engages and consequence pays off. And that scene when Midoriya rose again from the rubble and finally raised his arm, broken no more. That scene when a hero who gave everything, even his body, rises again to continue saving those that are powerless just like he used to be. That scene when a hero regains what he treasures most, which is the opportunity to save more lives with everything he is and everything he has. That scene would have been even better. Subscribe if you enjoy my writing. This essay is just a first shot that will pay off in many more to come. See you then.